The first impression that comes to our mind about any college: tall buildings, big classrooms, large lobby areas, thick books, IT labs, assignments, class tests, and projects, nothing besides that. Every hour, minute, second spent here help us carving and shaping our persona, cultivating innovative mindsets for the challenging world. Learning is a lifelong process. Sharing knowledge, inculcating values of life, spark the innovative horizons of mind. Fun and frolic is the nature of every nook and corner here. A daily dose of thrill we are sure to get here.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I'm Muskan Baveja, a fourth semester student at DME Media School. Welcome you all to the DME IQAC's virtual open house event, DMEX. Today's session is being organized in association with Keshav Suri Foundation on Way Forward to Make Campuses Inclusive. But before we begin with the session, I would like to remind you all that the wait is finally over. Yes, I am talking about ICAN 4, the International Conference on Information Communication and Artificial Network. Today, on the eve of ICAN 4, we are going to have the curtain raiser.
So as Muskan was mentioning that we are back with ICAN 4 and today we are raising the curtain for this next edition of our international conference. This time our theme is Information Communication and Artificial Networks. And today on this eve of ICAN, we are here to hear from Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School, and he's also the convener of ICAN 4. And sir, I invite you to please address the audience.
Thank you, Sukriti. So today is the eve of this fourth edition of ICAN. ICAN 4th is the fourth edition of this international conference. And since last year, we started it as a 10-day digital live conference. So that way, it is the second time that we are having this 10-day digital live conference. And every year, obviously, it's growing. And despite pandemic, we have not stopped. Instead, we have further enhanced it, enriched it by including more number of countries, by including more number of scholars, and by including more number of sessions. So this time it's 10 day means 10 days, and every day there is 7 to 8 hours proceedings happening from 9 in the morning to 9 in the night. And people will be joining from all over, from Australia to the US to South Korea to Singapore to Ghana. So that is how, this because of this time difference, we have to have certain sessions which according to us, according to Indian time standards, they are the odd timings. But then since we are having this rare opportunity of listening to very, very distinguished people in the sector of media education and media research. So whatever is speaking and this speeches will be there, that will happen tomorrow in the inaugural function. Today we have put as a very small thing simply to raise the curtain for tomorrow's conference. So but before proceeding further, I will request Professor Kiran Bala, who is Dean of School of Journalism and Mass Communication in K.R. Mangalam University, and she is her institute is a partner with the DME in organizing ICAN. And here I also must tell you this, that we organize this conference in collaboration with Deakin University, Melbourne, and we have ample partners who have joined hands with us in organizing this conference, which include Adamas University, which included Makhanlal Chaturvedi University of Journalism and Mass Communication, also Guwahati University, then Vigyan Prasar, which is under the Department of Science and Technology. So these are the organizations which have joined hand with us. So I will make a request to Professor Kiran Bala to say something on the occasion of this curtain raiser function of ICAN 4.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Amrish, sir. Good afternoon to all present here, all the academicians, management members, Sushmita Bala ma'am, all the faculty members of DME Media School, and all the students and other participants from other institutions. I think it's our pleasure that we are associated with Amrish sir and DME Media School. Since long we were associated with sir, but with this formal collaboration for this conference, I think this is something which I can boast upon in my organization and in other media institutions, that this is first of its kind conference. That yesterday also I was talking to someone and they were like, 10 days conference, how are you, managing? Will you be able to do it? And then I was like, no, we have, very good team in DME Media School and in KR Mangalam University, we are together. So I think we can do so much of wonder in the field of education, in the field of research as well. And another thing that I want to add upon is every time you choose this title, I can, in continuation, every time the topic, the title of the international conference is so innovative that whenever we discuss with others, they are like, ये तो बिल्कुल different है. Others are not doing like this. So international communication and artificial networks is very, very pertinent in today's scenario when everything is online. We are spending less time in offline space, more in digital space. So in this scenario, when so much is happening around, our life is, revolving in this online and offline space. So in this situation, it becomes very important to discuss the issues around the research which is happening in international arena. I think that's very, very great. And I would like to congratulate to team DME Media School, those who have put so much of efforts in organizing this conference. Great, sir. And again, thanks for associating us with this prestigious conference.
Thank you, Professor Kiran Bala. And since this is a long conference, long drawn conference for 10 days, so obviously different kind of sessions and everything is happening. But then on the eve of the conference, I would like that everybody gets to know what all the conference is about. So let us have a glimpse as to what all is there in ICANN 4. ICANN 4, the International Conference on Information, Communication and Artificial Network. This is a 10-day conference which is going to happen from 1st of July to 10th of July. Last year we had the first 10-day digital live conference, and this is the second edition of this digital live conference. And out of 8 partners associated with this conference, 2 are International Institute for Journalism, Ohio University, and Deakin University, Melbourne. In fact, Deakin University is the collaborator with us in this conference. And the most distinct feature of this conference is the participation of foreign scholars. These scholars belong to India, South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, United States, Mexico, Italy, France, Australia, and Ghana. Let us see who all are there on board. ICAN 4, the International Conference on Information, Communication and Artificial Network. The conference is happening from 1st of July to 10th of July 2021. So this is the fourth edition, and do you know what is the most distinct feature of this conference? This time all 9 technical sessions are being chaired by 9 women of substance who have made a mark in the media industry, academics and research. And at the same time, all the 9 co-chairs are also women media scholars. They are mostly faculty members of DME Media School and also of our partnering institutions. Let us have a look on the profile of these distinguished media professionals. ICAN 4 is the biggest and the largest media conference of the world. Large number of scholars have gathered here from different parts of the world to discuss and deliberate contemporary issues. There is a representation of scholars and professionals pan-India. They are coming from different cities and universities. And if I can name a few universities, these are University of Hyderabad, Guru Jambeshwar University Hisar, Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Mass Communication Bhopal, Adavas University Kolkata, Guwahati University Guwahati, then MET University Noida, and above all Indian Institute of Mass Communication. Let us meet these prominent scholars and professionals.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ambrish Saxena, for introducing us to ICANN time and again. Thank you so much, Professor Kiran Bala, for joining us today and for lending your support to ICANN as well. Now, moving ahead to our event for the day, I would once again, on behalf of DME IQAC, welcome all the guests, faculty, students, and team from Keshav Suri Foundation who are here to conduct the virtual open house DMEX on the pressing issue of inclusivity. Everyone, as we know, regardless of their sexual orientation or whatever gender identity they feel they have, deserves equal access to opportunities, services, and their safety is of utmost priority. However, it is unfortunate that many young people who identify as LGBTQ plus are amongst the most marginalized and particularly vulnerable to stigma, violence, and discrimination. Therefore, inclusivity for the LGBTQ plus community is taken as a representation for members in an environment where they feel belonged, safe, and comfortable to express their identity. Universities and campus spaces should be open space and should be an open space, safe and welcoming to promote a culture of inclusivity in its functioning of learning, working, and socializing activities. Now, with this theme, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, Director DME and Chairperson of DME IQAC to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Uh, when we talk about internal quality, I think the theme today which has been taken is very pertinent, and I can quote several examples why inclusivity is something which can bring about quality. When we talk about inclusivity, it is about LGBTQ, obviously, but then it's about including women, including the physically handicapped, including all the communities. You see the world history, means how things have evolved. We find that people who included every type of people in the progress, those countries progressed much better than those which were not including. I'll take a simple example. Say, for example, we talk about inclusion of women. LGBTQ, okay, it's fine. It's a specific category. Even when we talk about inclusion of women, we find that the Western countries progressed better than us because they could include women in the progress. The women were educated before us, so on and so forth. Uh, Say, look at the other side of the story. If women are not serving the society, if they are only looking after the household tasks, means almost 40-45%, or even rather in the Indian context, it's more than 50%. Um, so 50% of the population is left out when we don't include women in the progress. Now, coming to LGBTQ, yes, when we talk about quality, we can look around, say, universities, organizations, those who, those where people of a particular category gathered, they started stinking. You may see various examples around. Say, means I would not like to name any university, but there are universities which at one point in time were excellent, but then they started stinking. The reason was very simple. People of one kind gathered over there. So education is all about peer-to-peer learning. When people of a similar category are there, where is the peer-to-peer learning? So that is another aspect of inclusion. Uh, Akshay Tyagi will be talking more about LGBTQ. Yes, I fully agree. To conclude, I must say that if we want to progress, everyone should be part of progress, which simply means include everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Very rightly said. Now, let's welcome our guest for the day, Mr. Akshay Tyagi. Akshay Tyagi is a diversity and inclusion expert at the Keshav Suri Foundation. He has been actively involved in advocacy work for the LGBTQ plus community by working with NGOs at the grassroots level to help create an equal and equitable society. He's also the Youth Task Force member at UN AIDS for SDGs to 2030. Mr. Akshay Tyagi has been a panelist at the Future of Diversity, Being LGBTQ+ in the New Normal, organized by the Belgian Embassy in Manila. He has also spoken at several forums, including the Queer Hour Literature Festival, Austrian Embassy's session on art and gender, and American Embassy's discussion on allyship. His recommendations on SDGs and LGBTQ+ community have been presented to Niti Aayog and UN House, Delhi. Currently, Mr. Akshay is working with various colleges to create a roadmap for safe and inclusive campuses. Along with Mr. Akshay, I also welcome his team member, Ms. Kiara. Heartiest welcome from DME side to both of you. Now I hand over the dais to you, Mr. Akshay and Ms. Kiara.
Okay, so am I audible? Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, I would like to thank the entire DME team, especially when I was actually watching all these videos. I was not surprised because I can see Mr. Saxena sitting over there, so it is possible, and that's his way of doing it. So congratulations on the amazing work you all are doing and for initiating the conversation on inclusion and diversity. Of course, to make it more simpler for all of you to understand, before even going to LGBTQ, I would like to do a very basic exercise. Of course, you are sitting at 2:30 and you must be feeling bit lazy, or because you must have had a lunch. So if you can just put in the chat box, what would you like to drink at this moment? Please write in the chat box, and all those who can, please do look at the chat box as well. I think we had too many members. The responses should be more quicker.
Students, please type in the chat box. It is open to all, and if you are just message to everyone from the chat box instead of messaging to the host, you can message to everyone.
So if you look at the chat box, you will see diversity, because these are personal choices and preferences which each one of us did share, be it buttermilk, be it green tea, mojito, tea, coffee, jalzira, mango shake. All of these are diversity. And all of us sitting in one room today to discuss about it is inclusion, because we are all gathered together to discuss about it, respecting each one of our choices. If at one given point of time, there is someone who maybe didn't start at the same point where we started our careers, and we give that person an opportunity to join us today to discuss about it, that will be an equity measure, because that is one way of bringing someone in, pulling someone into the room to help that person also attain what we all are able to do today. This is brief on what diversity, inclusion, and equity is, and why it is very important, because this is how we as an individual are actually working on our personal choices and preferences in our lives. And for this particular task, I did not restrict you to write any particular name. I did not bound you, neither your college did bound you to just be specific that if you are part of the institution, you have to write this. We all did give you a free hand. And this is what we are actually going to discuss, because there is a lot we missed out on in the recent times. And today, this session is to discuss about how we as a college can help make that equitable society. Can you look at the screen?
Yes,
Okay.
the screen is visible.
Okay, so about Keshav Suri Foundation and It Gets Better India, and why are we striving to build inclusive campuses? There is there is no specific rule, because there are no case studies as of now which very clearly states that there are particular number of people who dropped out. But the very minimum of stories we heard of, we know of, all of have something similar, and that's that their educational institution, their society they started their journey in wasn't inclusive enough. And education plays a very important role when it comes to building a better future for all of us. So we thought that it is more important on our part to start conversations around inclusion and diversity. And when we talk about diversity inclusion, it is not just pertaining to the LGBTQI community, it's about everyone. So be it me, be it Sukriti, be it Mr. Saxena, all of us at one point of time in our lives had faced a moment where we were neglected, were secluded out of something, and we thought that why aren't we part of that particular thing? And that is actually what is pushing so many of our people at the stage where they should not be, because it is leading to mental health stress, it is leading to depression, it is leading them to live a life which they are not at all willing to but are forced to. So this is why we are discussing about the need of creating more inclusive campuses. There is this quote, and this is very beautiful one, because it's about the choices, it's about how one person in a specific, if doesn't feel that they are able to live their life how they wish to, so it is terrible to have to choose between being safe and being yourself. And because you know that there are so many atrocities happening to the LGBTQI folks, in particularly even with people with disabilities, asset survivors, and they are forced to live a life which they are not at all willing to. And it is something which we all have to work really hard on, so that we create that equal society where they can live their authentic self. About the rainbow flag, which actually denotes the LGBTQI pride flag as well, and the colors of rainbow. So all of us celebrate our lives, and we celebrate it because we understand the kind of colors it is filled with. And of course, in the recent past, we realized that when we talk about the rainbow, there is a very beautiful two colors which are missing, and that's actually black and brown, and that's actually for the people of color, which are the diverse people, which are the denotion to inclusivity. Then of course red talks more about the life, orange about the healing, yellow about the sunlight, green about the nature, blue about the harmony, and violet about the spirit. And these colors are the foundation of each one of our lives to make it easy for each one of our queer folks to live a decent life, and why we are all striving to discuss more on how to build that equal society. At Keshav Suri Foundation, so we as a foundation were launched in 2018, soon after the scrapping of Section 377 by the Honorable Supreme Court, and wherein in the judgment itself they said that this judgment needs to go out to all the RWA societies, colleges, so that everybody out there is sensitive and is informed enough on what Section 377 is all about, and why we as a body had to decriminalize it. However, there is a long way to go. As per Section 377, people are only able to have consensual sex, and there is a lot beyond just that particular need of human body. At Keshav Suri Foundation, our main objectives are to embrace, empower, and mainstream the LGBTQI plus community. We provide employable skill opportunities to the community and STEC survivors and people with disabilities as well at the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group. We sensitize workspaces and now taken this forward to colleges as well to accept diversity as a way of life, and also work on gender neutral policies and benefits with the organizations. Diversity and inclusion, like I already explained you through an examples, diversity, and I'm just quoting another example. When we get into a metro, we often see that there are so many people out there sitting, and that is actually the diversity. Each one of us is a different, the fact or quality of being diverse, but there is no assurance that each one of them sitting in that coach is also inclusive. And that is where we need to push more effort. That is where we have to make sure that people, if at all enter into some another zone, they don't find any discomfort in being their real authentic self. And that is how diversity and inclusion works. While diversity is more about numbers, more is quantitative in nature, inclusion is more of qualitative as well. And this is about you creating that environment by bringing people together. And then plays a very important role is belongingness, because even if you are inclusive, you have to create that sense of belongingness within your team members, within your students, within your faculty, so that your diverse people sitting under one room will actually feel also inclusive to be there. Look at this beautiful picture, and this is what we are talking about. This is about one room, people of all sort of colors, dressing styles, everything together, and such a beautiful depiction of inclusion and diversity together. As we just discussed, that diversity is about people's perspective, equity is about people, policy, practice, and position, inclusion is about power, voice, and organization, culture, and it is also equity in particularly is also important because of the historical legacies, and so many communities are actually forced to are pushed back, and that is why we are needed to make some concrete efforts to bring them into the mainstream today, so that we as a community help each other, we as a society help each other grow in our individual positions. Just another example, you can see these two images on the right. One is the example of equality and another of equity. So in this particular space, when we asked three people to witness a football match, so at one slide, you can see how how in order to create an equal society, we actually had given three stools of the same size to three people, whereas it was only this man standing on the stool was able to see that match, while the girl is still struggling and person with disability is not just able to do so. Wherein if we implemented the equity measure and we realized that this person doesn't really even need the stool and can also be at the ground to witness it in a good manner, we passed on the two stools to the girl and she is also now able to watch the match. And for the person with disability, we had to keep in mind the accessibility measure, and we brought in the elevator for that person so that that person can actually witness the match. And that is where it is most important for us to look at the specific needs and requirements of the community people when we talk about the different sections, when we talk about the marginalized communities, because they all do come from different social, economical, and political background. And it is important for all of us to understand that we all don't start from the same point. And that is why it is more important to push a bit extra measure to bring them into the mainstream. Okay, this is something where I would like you as well to intervene, and I will stop my screen share. And I need your participation in this. And this is an open forum. I would like to understand if anyone can share what is their understanding about gender, sex, and sexuality. It could be any of you, and what is gender, what is sex, what is sexuality? If they are same, if there is any difference, please unmute yourself and let us know.
Students, you can write in the chat box whatever definitions are coming to your mind. You can post it in the chat. Yes, Ms. Shreya Mahajan, you can also contribute.
Okay, let's divide. What is gender? I think that would be easy.
We are waiting for a response from Ms. Shreya Mahajan. She's a faculty member at DME. I request the team to kindly allow her to unmute herself.
Yeah, hi. So, am I audible?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. So, from where I understand, I think sex is static per se. It is related to the sexual organs or the gonads that you're born with. So, it is always going to be dual, right? Per se, intersex are also being included in the category of sex these days. So, I can broaden that. That it goes around to three prominent, gonads that we are talking about. But gender is basically more of an identity. Gender is a mental construct or a social construct, I must say. Should not be a social construct though. Should be a mental construct on how I perceive myself and not how the society perceives me. And gender is more dynamic in nature, not static as sex is, right? So gender keeps on evolving that way. It is fluid. And the third, I think you asked about sexuality, right? So it's about preferences. It has concepts of autonomy, concepts of intimacy, concepts that are related to privacy also. This is how I see it.
No, I think you very well stated each of these definitions. Sex, of course, is biological. It's entirely on the reproductive organs which one is born with. And as you mentioned, there are three sexes which are male, female, and intersex. And intersex is not just added recently, but had been there since the beginning itself, but is the less talked about sex category when we discuss about it. More often, even in the sex column, you would have seen others as a category or transgender as a category, but that's actually not the sex. That's part of the gender. So in totality, sex is basically male, female, and intersex. When we talk about gender in specific, it is about the psychological and social meaning attached to being a woman and a man. And this is where we discuss about transgenders as well. So of course, masculine, feminine, and third one is others, where people can opt to behave a certain way. There are also non-binary people who doesn't fit or tick any particular box when it comes to being masculine or feminine, and they experience and explore both ways. So that is how masculine, feminine, and others. And sexual orientation, which we discussed, is entirely about the enduring pattern of romanticism and like sexual attraction. It can be towards the same sex partner, it can be towards the other sex partner, it can be within the trans people as well, like a transgender person, a transgender woman can also be in love with a transgender man, a transgender man can also be in love with a biological cisgender woman, and all of this is possible. And that is how we discuss is that everything is right, and there should be no question when it comes to love, because love is definitely not something which just primarily looks at your body type or the kind of sex you are born with. It is much beyond than that, and that is how love is also defined. So this is basically what sex, gender, and sexual orientation is. Of course, there's this depiction. I want to quickly understand from you, is this even the right one? So of course, uh, you recently just mentioned that gender is a social construct, and this is something which is actually socially constructed only, which you can see in the image. There is a girl, you can see, and I'm not labeling that if the right one is a girl or if the blue one is the girl, but this is on us, because this is how we are socially learning about the gender roles and specifications, and this is how we are over the period of time stereotyping things. So the girl which is depicted in the pink is actually shared some of the roles, like the makeup, like the heart, lips, the crowns, the paint. So all these gender roles are what is socially constructed. However, why are we discussing this today is because these socially constructed elements over the period of time have done enough harm when we talk about the entire spectrum of gender, because there are so many women who are not at all interested in crown, lipstick, paint, are rather opt to be a lesbian woman and are not interested in this, are trans men are not interested in this, and doesn't even gel up with the definition which we are socially aligning to them. This is why it is important for us to not put them into any labels, rather give them their fair share of personal choice and preferences, like we discussed in the very beginning, so that everyone can live their authentic self and be their own selves. And there is no such right or wrong element which should go with a particular or specific gender. And this is what is very important for all of us to learn, especially because educational campuses are the place which help people learn about their real authentic selves. This plays a very important role, that as a professor, as a mentor, one should not restrict any of the student to behave a certain way, act a certain way, or there is no such thing like be a man or it's behave like a woman. We have to move beyond that, and there are so many people out there who are the live examples. And I also have with me my team member. I'll have Kiara also speak and share her journey in the later phase. Just to give you a brief about the LGBTQI people, like we just mentioned about the orientation, a lesbian are basically the female who experiences love or sexual attraction towards other females. Gay are the male who experiences love or romantic love or sexual attraction towards other females. And there is no right or wrong way of being a gay or not being a gay, because while there are gay people who wear makeup, there are also cisgender gay men who doesn't wear a makeup and don't like a makeup. So we have to stop stereotyping this. There are bisexual people who are sexually attracted towards both men and women. There are transgender persons, so they are basically the person who are biologically born as someone else, and then their identity, their social identity, their expression are of a different person. So they doesn't behave or uh, ascertain that the the sex which they are born with is not really something which they confine themselves with. And this is how there are trans people, there are transgender women, there are transgender man. Then there are intersex people as well, like we discussed. They are the people who have sexual anatomy different than the male and female one. They either have the less developed reproductive organs, or maybe have two reproductive organs, or their anatomy is different. And then there are queer people, who there are people like non-binary people and so many others who doesn't really want to put a tick on any of the above. And they oftentimes feel like they are maybe gay, they oftentimes feel like they're maybe bisexual, while they confirm that they're part of the spectrum, but they doesn't tick a particular box, and that's how they are the queer people, who are the non-conforming ones. These are some of the pride flags, and these are some of the identities, while the road is really really long one, and how we have been embracing diversity and the sexual identities over the period of time. Before going to this, I'll now ask my team member Kiara to please share her journey, because I think why we are discussing this today is from the fact that we do see a lot of people who have had their own share of struggles and challenges in their personal lives, and Kiara is one such example. So, Kiara, would you please like to share your story as a trans woman, about your experiences at your school, and then to the change which you had seen when you joined the corporate world?
Hi, namaskar, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, pardon my background noise because there's a construction going on. But I will try my level best to be as much as audible to the whole team. And first of all, I thank each and every one present out here to have me on this platform to speak about my journey. Uh, of course, I would first of all would like to tell you all guys that I'm an open and out trans woman, and yes, and I have a relationship with a cisgender man. So we can, as Akshay rightly mentioned earlier, so we cannot categorize anybody just by their sexual orientation or by their gender. And moving forward about my journey, I was born and brought up in Calcutta, with a very rebel family where I come from, and an educated family. And I was glad that I had a support of my parents for whom I am what I am today. And most importantly is that uh, once we as a human being or as a child walk out towards the world to create a path of a career, that is the when actual life starts for each and every individual, where you come across a lot of people who will accept you, who will not accept you, with a lot of reasons, with social norms, with the stereotype thinking and everything. This is the point where we need to bring in a change. And that is the reason why we are talking about it in this forum. Because, and to all these students, because these are the future of the coming generation. And most importantly, when I walked out from my family, from moving out from the umbrella of my family, it was a very difficult road to make myself accepted as a trans woman in the society at that point of time. And the bed, of course, my bed was not full of roses. It had ups and downs. It was like more like a roller coaster ride, but in a way it was amazing. uh, the curiosity, the questions which were there in the faces or in the minds of the people whom I come across sometimes was really demotivating, but at the same time, sometimes made me so strong as a human being so that I am able to answer them very nicely today with what I am today. When I started my career with the corporate world, though I was not directly pointed out, but somewhere or the other, as an individual, I come to face the vibes from my fellow colleagues and everybody, how the things were. They had questions in their mind, they had curiosity in their mind. But today, when I walked into an inclusive firm, inclusive organization like the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group, uh, my experience was different altogether. I worked with a lot of corporates, a very well branded corporates like HSBC, Ericsson, IBM, then G Streets. I have worked with these corporates. However, they were inclusive, they were everything. But just showing inclusiveness is not, or just showing that we are diversified is not at all the topic. The topic is the sense of belongingness. Are you making me feel that I belong to the same family? That's what most important is in our organization. And that is what I got it from the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group, where the people were treated equally. There were no discrimination on in terms of caste, creed, gender, sexual orientation, or color, or religion. And talking about diversified and inclusive organization does not only categorize LGBTQIA plus community. And my question to each one is always that why do we categorize LGBTQIA plus community as a different category? We are one, we are all human beings. That's the most important part. Love and soul has no gender. So, most importantly, we need to understand that we all are humans. And we should never categorize women in one part, male in one part, LGBT in one part. No, why to categorize a different group? We are talking about equality, we are talking about inclusion. We should have all in one as one umbrella, that is humanity and human being. That's my point. And yes, I completed my journey with Keshav Suri Foundation and the Lalit Suri Hospitality Group, where it helped me to complete my whole transition as a woman. And This sense of belongingness to a firm and being from the community member, getting the sense of belongingness in an organization means a lot to a human being. Because when you feel that I belong to this family of the organization, I belong to each one of you, I am one of them, you feel secured, you have the sense of confidence, and you have the sense of motivation, and you build up a nice, good environment across around. So that is why we at Lalit Suri Hospitality Group always follow one campaign, that is the hashtag Pure Love campaign, which is pure love. That itself is self explanatory, that there is no differentiation. It's just simple pure love. So this is what about my journey is. I hope I was able to summarize the whole diversified and inclusive organization together. Thank you.
No, you certainly did, Kiara, and thank you for sharing your journey. So, while Kiara is one trans woman who have had the support, of course, the road for her back in her school times and in college wasn't that easy. And it's not just about Kiara, but also about millions of people out there who are trans, and even more than that, the LGBT people from the queer community, the spectrum, who is actually pushed to leave their schools back and forth, and that's something which has been happening since years. There are so many people who are not able to finish their studies and then are pushed to sex work, are pushed to begging, and all of that is something which we as a society has to take an onus of. And while this data is something which we currently don't have in India, this is out of US, but imagine a country which already has an acceptance to the queer folks is facing a like 18% of their LGBTQ plus community is has a fear to come out because they are scared, because they feel that if they will come out, maybe they will be judged or there will be some sort of discrimination which they will have to face. 51% of LGBTQ youth are more than 2 times likely to face discrimination or verbally harassed or molested or called names in the schools. 26% of those students fear that maybe if they will come out, they will lose the support of their families, and there are non-accepting families. And these challenges are not just pertaining to people from the US, but are to everybody from the LGBTQ plus spectrum across the globe. Because while coming out is a process, it is really a difficult task for someone to understand about the spectrum, because our understanding about gender, sex, and sexuality is very limited. And if we try to go back to history and not beyond, but to even our parents' experience, that would have been very different. So it will take a lot of time to bridge that entire gap and to bridge that entire scenario of being putting the LGBTQ plus community as someone being neglected or ostracized for some or other reason. And that is why it is very important. At workspace, of course, and at colleges, it is important that we as a society will not all should not behave a heteronormative way. We should be open to people so that there is no race to conform the norm, so that people won't just follow the norm. Okay, there, because there are so many heterosexual people, then I should also be closeted, I should not come out. And while there is no right or wrong time to come out, it is important for us as an institution, us as a place where people work, teach, study, to make sure that people feel safe and inclusive when they are at work. There are, of course, lack of role models. When we hear people's stories, we always hear about the kind of demotivation, the kind of challenges people face, the kind of atrocities which the people from the community have been facing since years. It is time now to create role models. It is time now to go beyond first IPS officer, first lawyer from the trans community, first doctor from trans community, to so many other people who should join the race, and to become many more success stories from the community. And it is time now that we should enforce that, because if we as an institution make sure that we are creating that safe space, then I'm sure you will have so many of the role models building in your campus itself, who will not just outshine as an individual but also help the campus, also have the college to have their name and to have some sort of a contribution in their success story. And we have to avoid direct and indirect discrimination, which we are doing. If we look at this map from the world, you will see that there are very few countries who have the constitutional protection for LGBTQI plus people. And these are the countries in the dark blue color. And the people with the dark red, which are of course the are in a very large number, are the countries which have LGBTQ restricted and their people jailed and also killed. India, however, lies in the moderate region. It is actually not, while it is not criminal offense, being someone from LGBTQI plus community, we also doesn't really give them any provisions as well. However, the scenario has bit changed for the transgender community. The bill is still in process. A lot of changes and recommendations have gone and are working on. So this is the current map. Why it is important to build an inclusive campus and to make sure that our people are seen and heard. So of course, if there are people, while it is easy for many of us to get into some college, get a degree, and where thinking about a degree is not a challenge, that's actually a class privilege. That's actually our identity, our background privilege that we come from. And that is why we need to think about the people who are not living that reality, who are not starting at that point. If most of us are feeling unprotected by the police, are feeling that we are unsafe, then probably we need to think about why do we need the protection. And it goes similar with the LGBTQI plus spectrum, because if someone is coming out as a gay man, or people from the LGBTQI spectrum, or trans women and or trans men, they are constantly bullied or harassed or called names. And this is actually something which why we need to talk about it, why we need to ask questions around it. If we are having easy access to public washrooms where people can easily walk in and get released and also then move out freely, then it's not the same story with the LGBTQI folks. We have to understand that people from the same sex who are homosexual or who have the same sex attraction, they people always follow, they stare, they always fear, there is anxiety using those public washrooms. And that is why we need to make accessible washrooms for the LGBTQI plus spectrum. Of course, it is just now 3 days back that Delhi has introduced its first transgender washroom. So imagine in all these years how struggling it was for a trans person to actually have that easy access to a washroom in the national capital, Delhi. So that is why it is more important for us to talk about it, and for as an institution like DME as well, so that if there is someone from the community, you have your gender neutral washrooms in place so that people from the spectrum can have an easy access to the washroom without the fear of fear or stares or anxiety. Of course, there are so many of us who can easily walk on the street holding our partner's hand, but that's not the reality with the gay partners, with the lesbian partners, and people stare, people question, and all of these come from a certain privilege. And these are some of the examples of privilege. If there is someone with disability, then of course they people need extra effort from all of us to make sure that we bring them the equity, we bring them that platform to actually come at an equal space. So this is why it is important and very important, necessary for all of us to take some certain measures to bring them to an equal and equitable space and to talk about it more often. Now coming to our major subject, why and how is that we can make our campuses inclusive. Of course, like I discussed, for the professors, for the teachers, if you really want to hire.
Mr. Akshay, I'd just like to pause you for a moment. I think you've accidentally turned off your camera. Could you please turn it on again? Yes, now you're visible. Thank you. Sorry, and you may continue.
Thank you. Okay, so why it is important for us to make campus friendly, campus LGBTQI plus friendly, and not just from the students' perspective, but to begin with, if you are willing to hire people as faculty members from the LGBTQI plus spectrum, then it is very important for us to recognize their identities, recognize their needs, and to also have insurance policies like we have in general for everyone else to be in place, which are gender neutral, which are inclusive. There should be an insurance for the same-sex partner. There should be an insurance for someone who want to undergo gender reaffirmation surgery. There should be some leave adoption policy as well for the trans or same-sex couples. So it is very important at the very hiring point. Of course, your environment should be sensitive. Teachers should be sensitive. Administration should be sensitive about the identities. We have to organize regular training sessions so that uh, whosoever is working within the campus is not acting strange, will not in some or other way result in any sort of discrimination against these people. And this is why it is very important to educate everyone, including faculty, staff, and administrators, about the importance of sex, gender, and sexuality. You have to make facilities available for LGBTQI students. Like, of course, your housing should have specific specific sections for the trans community, because it's very difficult for someone from the spectrum to share a room with someone else. So we have to make arrangements if you at all have the housing facilities available for students or your faculty members. There should be accessible restrooms, should be there for the spectrum health services, because while we know that all of us are humans, but it is also important for us to understand that all of us have different needs. And when we talk about this LGBTQI plus spectrum, their health needs are different, because especially when we talk about the trans persons, there are so many HRTs, therapies, and other medications which people go through. So it is important that our health services also include them in the spectrum, and those of the services are also remain available for them. Of course, we have to build resource centers where people can have easy access to books, and also some of the resource guidelines, some of the ways on how to make more equitable and inclusive society, how to maybe learn more about gender, sex, and sexuality as well. And there are so many, especially when it comes to the sports arena, there is a lot of discrimination, and most of times we didn't recognize people's need. So it is important to make sure that we also have athletic locker rooms specifically there for the LGBTQI people, so that their talent, they don't fear to be there as part of the team, and they have easy access to the facilities, which as a trans person, as a non-binary person, or as someone being lesbian, gay, or bisexual needs. You of course should have a resource directory for students and faculty members, so that they can understand more about the sexuality, they can learn more about the transition journey, because when we work with a lot of people from the community, it's not going to be that easy, especially in the beginning, because we have to understand that they come from a certain background, they come from a certain experience, and a lot of exclusion which they had faced over the years has actually resulted in a lot of mental health issues, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety within their own selves. So as in someone who are passionate to drive change and work with the community, it is important on our part to keep on learning as an individual, so that our understanding about the community will not just be limited. So it is important that we talk about transition surgeries, the changes which a person goes through, and how important it is for us to understand their lived experiences. And that is why it is important for not just this session, but you should do a lot more sessions where you invite people from the community itself to share about their journeys, so that you also get to know about the lived experiences from themselves. Oftentimes we also realize that while it is not important, and for most of the people it is difficult to come out and share about their journey and everything, what best we can do is maybe offer some classes on mute to the or to discuss about the LGBTQI issues. Let everybody close their cameras. They can be anonymous to attend these calls, and these calls should only talk about the stories of inclusion, about the positive deviant stories from the community, where people can share their struggles, can share their journeys, and can share their accomplishments. Like Kiara herself, she can be a great person to talk about her journey in specific, how struggling was it for her when she came out in the initial phase, how difficult it was for her when she did her education, and how smoothly she actually transitioned when she actually joined the corporate world, and how her identity was never something which she really banged upon and which she really talked much about, that this is because of her identity, but rather is about her work. She is currently managing the entire marketing and PR for the Lalit Ashok Bangalore, and she is the only trans woman marketing manager in the entire PR chain of the Bangalore city. So I think these are some sorts of achievement which people should know, that if at all they opt to come out and share their narratives, there are so many people out there who you can actually be a hope and great inspiration to learn from. I think this is more or less what some of the important ways on building an inclusive campus. We have to host regular sessions. There should be accessible washrooms, accessible facilities for everyone, including people with disabilities, because when we talk about the LGBTQI spectrum, it is important that there is also intersectionality. It is just one segment. There are people with disability as well who identify themselves as trans, people who identify themselves as LGBTQ plus community. So it is important for us to make sure that their needs and deeds are seen and heard. Additionally, I think a subtle way of putting it forth is that all of us should become an ally to the community, and how one can be an ally to the community is just by being learning about the spectrum, by learning about the lives and the challenges which they face, and standing by them, supporting them. It is not always important for you to speak and share about their journey, but rather, if at all they need your support, you have to be there. If they at all you feel someone is getting discriminated or bullied within the campus, as an ally you can speak on their behalf, you can speak for their rights, so that they people don't fear being their authentic self. And that is how we have to collectively build an inclusive environment for each one of us, sense judgment. And more so, if you can look at my name on the Zoom as well, it reads as Akshay, Tyagi, he, him, and that's how I also started my communication when I started this session. Using my pronouns is one of the very inclusive way, because as an ally, I feel that it is an onus on me to not erase someone's identity or someone's choice to get identified as someone. So like I start conversations journey like saying my name and then my pronouns, so that if at all I get to meet someone who maybe look like a man but doesn't really identify themselves as a male, and are not, because of the socially constructed element which we just discussed, they are not also expressing or living a certain life, but identify themselves as a trans man or trans woman. That can also, because I aim to provide a safe space, they can come out to me and share their preferred name and pronouns. And this is an inclusion way, and this is a best practice, so that we don't erase identities and also provide that safe space to people from all walks of life. Now I'm up for questions, and I think Kiara is also here. So
Thank you so much, Akshay and Kiara, for the wonderful presentation. Yes, we do have some questions. I would like to take up the first question here from the statement that you just made about you have identified yourself with the pronouns as well. But there is one question from Miss Muskan Baveja. She's asking, how can we become more sensitive towards the other groups or people who are different from us, particularly in this context, and make sure that we do not offend them, because in every situation we cannot identify ourselves with our pronouns as well. In certain situations it's possible, in many situations it's not. So how can students make sure that they are not offending anybody at least unintentionally or unintentionally? Sorry.
Okay, Kiara, would you like to answer this? Please.
This is a very good question, Muskan. Of course, being a part of a campus, you need to be very sensitive and very cautious about how you can approach a particular person from a different community or from a different who is different from cisgender men and women. And because a sexual orientation is a very sensitive issue, so you need to be very particular. Of course, it's nothing rocket science. I would suggest, if you anytime find something different, something curiosity that you have towards that person, the best way is not to strike a conversation on that particular subject. The best way is to just strike a conversation just as a normal friend. Just strike a conversation. When you learn and unlearn, when you start conversing, when you start talking to that person, you come to know the person as a friend. Start knowing the person as a friend. Start knowing, and slowly and steadily, when the conversation builds up, you know, slowly and steadily, the person starts opening up. And slowly and steadily, you will see you are getting you're gaining the confidence of that particular person, and automatically the person would be the first one to come out to you, because the person would be feeling a sense of confidence, a sense of belonging, a sense of secureness towards you. The trust factor you need to build through normal conversation. It's not that you just need to ask, oh, uh, are you a gay, are you a lesbian? You cannot ask that. That's nothing to do with it. You should approach the particular person as a human, as a friend, and just have a strike in a normal conversation. That's it.
Thank you, Kiara, for that response. There is another question from a person who wishes to remain anonymous. The person says that I am taking therapy for gender dysmorphia. How can I come out to my family and friends and authorities?
It's a very sensitive thing. Uh, I would suggest, uh, if the person is going through that counseling session right now for gender dysphoria, uh, one counseling session is not easy. It takes months for people to find out, is it really a gender dysphoria, or is it just a hormonal imbalances. So for that person, my message would be, because I have passed through this transition phase, and this is the first initial step of you coming out and you trying to transition. So I would suggest that particular person that to understand himself or herself very well, that what he or she wants, what is the priority, and there's nothing so much hurry to come out to the society or to your parents that what you are. You need to understand yourself. uh, there are a lot of factors that depends upon it, of how much matured that person is, what is the age of that person. There are people who are detected with gender dysphoria at the age of 30, 32, and there are people whose gender dysphoria is detected at the age of 16. So, my main thing would be take time, understand, and I hope he or she, whoever the individual is going through a very well known and an expert to take these therapies, because it is a very sensitive thing that can spoil somebody's life also if a wrong step is taken. Because there are cases where people has recognized themselves as gender dysphoria and taken a wrong step and later on repented. So that should not be the case in this towards this individual. So I would suggest you to consult more, more and more, not stick to one consultation. uh, do a good research on the particular factor. What is gender dysphoria, what is sexuality, what does different sexuality means. Should do a proper research and then move forward before coming out.
Thank you so much. The next question is actually from my side. So while during the presentation, there were terms coming up like when we were trying to define what is gender, what is the difference between sex and sexuality. So we do use this term, we identify certain things as masculine and certain things as feminine. And you know, how we identify that what is the gender that a person identifies with is also somewhere, it is my understanding, I may be wrong about it, please correct me if I am, that these terminologies do hold some form of definition, whether it is masculinity or femininity. We associate certain characteristics to these two words, and that is how we define what gender do we identify with. So if we are talking about being gender fluid, would you recommend that we completely do away with these two terms, masculinity and femininity, in order to be, I mean, in a longer run, of course, not right away, it's not easy to do away with terms, but would you recommend this thing?
Akshay, would you like to answer this or should I? You're on mute.
You go ahead and I will add on.
See, I don't think so. Doing away with the word masculinity and femininity should be the proper answer to it. Uh, I think gender fluid is a total different aspect altogether. A person, I was born as a male. I'm just giving an example. I was born as a male. I had feminine characteristics, right? So I have decided to be termed as she and her. And I have decided myself, because of my feminine character, to be as woman. And that you can tell me, oh, she's feminine, she's very feminine, and she's woman. Second, there can be a man who's born as a man, very masculine, and sometimes very feminine. That is when it is gender fluidity comes. It's a blend of both men and women together. There can be a woman in a campus who identifies herself as she or her, but she can be very masculine. So you cannot term her as gender fluid. So it is very important to have masculinity, femininity, and gender fluid things all together, because these three are total different aspects altogether. Everything has a different characteristics.
Yes, and just to add, if you go back to the presentation, we also discussed that there is masculinity and femininity, and there is others category, which also encompasses the non-binary sections. And they are the basically people who are gender fluid in nature. While it is not important for them to tick a particular box, they at times feel like a man, they dress up like a man, and while at the other time, they also opt to wear or express or behave like a woman. So that is why we, instead of going with the trans in a specific transgender person or something, we just categorized as other, so that everybody in campus comes under that category. And that is how gender fluidity is working. There are so many people to name too, especially Sushant Divgikar, who is also known as Rani Kohinoor, who had appeared on a number of shows. There is also an artist, Durga Gode. All these people are non-binary people and are gender fluid people who, and it is not important, because if you look at the gender fluid people, it is not important for them. They can wear a makeup and they can still wear a sari, and they can wear nail paints and they can still wear a suit. So all of these things have, and this is what gender fluidity is. And it is also a fact that most of us in our lives at certain point of time had done something masculine in nature, feminine in nature, but that's really not something which is actually fluidity in general. That is actually our expression, and that is how this entire spectrum works.
Thank you so much for clarifying the thing. I have a comment from Mr. Pramod Pandey. He's a faculty member with DME Media School, and he would like your opinion on his statement that he says that India as a society has been so proud of its tolerance and its ability to respect the diversity, but the reality is far-fetched from this. And in fact, he believes that it is the opposite of where the diversity is not respected at an individual level, through though everyone carries that false sense of pride for being part of a society that has respected diversity since ages. We all do like to refer to our history and say that we have been a very accepting society. So he would like you to comment on this statement. Do you agree with it or do you disagree with it?
See, I think uh, India is a diverse country, and this is something which, ever since we were in grade second or third, we learned about India, right? And we all, like every statement when we read about India, this word in particular, diverse, is present. However, it is important for us to understand that the kind of diversity which we are talking about is not just limited to caste, color, sexuality. It's actually much beyond that. We all come from different social, economical, political backgrounds, and all of these people are what contributes to our upbringing, our society at the larger level. And while it is important, everybody has been mentioning that we are tolerant and there is a lot which happens in the country at a larger level, but it is sad to know that irrespective of all of that, this particular section, when we talk about the gender, sex and sexuality, while you can see a long debates on caste, long debates on class, long debates on so many of the other things happening globally, you hear very few people, organizations talking about the disparities which we have seen with respect to gender, sex and sexuality over the period of time. Especially, it is not something which is new. It is as old as our Vedas and has existed since ages. Like our Kama Sutra has depictions from homosexuality. Our Khajuraho temples have depiction of homosexuality. Despite all of these things which are present, our mythology has mentions from the homosexuality. Our Lord Krishna is a perfect example of gender fluidity himself. So all of these things are something which have continuously brought to our understanding that there is so much diversity, but it is only tolerant till the point it is not coming to us, especially when we talk about the gender, sex and sexuality. And this is a fact that while we are talking about it so outrightly and proudly, and discussing it, probably if one of us probably had someone, maybe their kid or maybe their brother or sister, like just to give you an example, yesterday only we were doing a session at Cognizant, and there was one employee who came to us and she told that she is a lesbian woman, a self-identified lesbian woman, while her sister was actually the one who inspired her to come out because of all her support to the LGBTQI community on her social media feeds and the kind of post she has been making. And the moment she came out to her, she was like, why are you doing this? Why? This is not possible. And she became entirely a different person. Like all this support, which was there on the social media feeds for so many other people to look at, this story entirely got changed when the person was just sitting next to her as her sister. So this entire definition, the stigma, the kind of beliefs we all carry with each other, especially when we come to gender, sex and sexuality, change their dynamics. And that is how, when despite being one of the most tolerant countries, because of course we can see a lot much happening across the globe, be it with respect to our religion, be it respect to our political stints happening up and down. So all of these, while we are all tolerant with respect to these, we are still not tolerant with the fact that a trans woman claim a space at a corporate position at someone senior, and we still just look at that person as someone as a commodity, and be it a lot of female employees or team members as well. And I think we have to go beyond that. It is time now for us to celebrate individual identities, and people like Zainab Patel, like Simran Sheikh, like Abina Hill, like Kiara herself, to make sure that these people claim their spaces rather than just being there as a token, because this is where we need to be more tolerant. This is where we need to make them claim their spaces. And this is how, when from the perspective of a lot of diversity which exists around us, we are tolerant enough. We are required to be more sensitive and understanding, and that can only happen when we also expand our horizons to learn more about the gender, sex, and sexuality. Look at people from the community from a ray of hope, from a different perspective. There should be more of resilience. There should be more of understanding, and that can only happen when we read about them, when we look at the videos from the community, hear people out from the community. And I think that is something which will bring in change. Why we are not tolerant yet when it comes to this specific section is because there is a dearth of stories when it comes to stories of positive deviant from the queer community, and this is one of the very important highlight which we need to work on.
Thank you so much, Akshay. The next question I have is again from an anonymous person who wants to remain anonymous, asking how does one tackle the issue of gatekeeping within the queer community itself? As a queer person myself, I have faced discrimination on many aspects. So how do we solve this problem?
I would like to, can you repeat that question, please, once again?
Sure. The person is asking, how does one tackle the issue of gatekeeping within the queer community itself? Because the person who has posted the question identifies themselves as queer, and they say that they have faced discrimination on many aspects from within the community.
That's nothing very unusual, which I have come across this question from a community member. Being from a community member, of course, there are people who will discriminate, and it can be on any terms. So you just need to be very, what do you call it? You should not let these things bother you, first of all, because all five fingers are never same. It is not only for the LGBTQIA plus community, it is for each and every individual present in this forum. Everybody is not same. Everybody, one or the other, may be or may not be. Try to discriminate each other in one or the other way when it comes to personal, or when it comes to professional, or when it comes to social obligations. So I would suggest that person not to think about that so much, what the others are talking about, what the others are discriminating about. I would only say take everything positively. And when you take every discrimination as a positive and constructive way, and be positive and optimistic, there's no way that somebody can affect you in that part. And most importantly, and especially, don't overthink. It is a part and parcel of life that each and every one of us in this forum goes through. So you need to be matured enough to understand that, and not and let the bygones be bygones, and which is positive, take the positive aspect, which is negative, let the negative aspect go away from you. That's all.
Thank you so much again for all your wonderful responses. And I'm sure the people here, the students here, would have learned a lot today from all the different aspects that you've introduced us to. And of course, there is still a long way for us to go. I also have personally a lot of learning to do in this regard. We all do. Now, I would like, since this was the last question, I would now invite Dr. Seema ma'am, faculty member of DME, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sukriti ma'am. Good afternoon to everybody. And I, Dr. Seema ma'am, Associate Professor for DME Management School. I'm quite humbled and honored to present the vote of thanks and to be a part of this today. I really, it is a big takeaway for me as well, personally. And I extend my gratitude to this beautiful two speakers today, eminent speakers who graced our occasion, Akshay and Kiara. And in this DME IQAC, the Keshav Suri Foundation on this topic, which we call Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, DMEX. So as Akshay rightly said, that everyone does not come from the same point, but at the same time, all are considered to be equal. All should be considered to be equal. And the biggest takeaway for me was that we are allied to the community. It's I think, prime responsibility also, which unfortunately we were not taught, since our childhood, because I don't know what the reason was. Like, they say that, we practice all the religions and we are taught that religions are equal. We can go to a mosque, we can go to a temple. But then when it comes to discussion about queer community, it's like, shush, don't discuss. Because since we are maybe the different ones, I won't say the privileged ones, I don't say, because I find people in this community more privileged. They have acquired certain accolades also. But yes, that's how we have been grown up. But now the onus or the responsibility lies on we, because we have to cater to the next generation. So I myself have this biggest takeaway from today's session, and I really feel fortunate to be a part of this. That yes, it's my responsibility to at least make aware at least 5 people around me. I believe in it starts from there. So including my kids, right? That's how they tomorrow become the citizens and they take it further. So it's responsibility of every person sitting here, being like students, of course. And Kiara, as you rightly said, it was all about love, and every person is equal. That's our constitution as well. And but practically, how much do we implement it? As I said, it's all about a silent zone when we have to look at. But yes, when somebody achieves something, then we say, they have done a great job. But what about the others? So I think extended responsibility to each one of us, at least being a part of this. So thank you both for enlightening us about it. And then I extend my thanks to all the dignitaries here, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami sir, he's our director, DME, Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean Media School, Dr. Sushmita Bala ma'am, she's the HOD for Dean Media School, Professor Dr. Kiran Bala as well from KR Mangalam. I was very happy to see her as well, and my colleague Ms. Sukriti Arora. And last but not the least, extending my vote of thanks to the wonderful audience, that's our students. I hope, and I'm sure actually, that they would be very, feeling pride, because topic mein shayad initially unko nahi samajh mein aaga why we are going, to attend the session. But over this 2-hour session, approximately, they must have realized that it was worth being here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
DME has embraced digital paradigm shift by adopting technology-based learning.
Unlike other colleges, we adopted a two-step strategy. In step 1, teachers would be preparing the videos, students would be watching them. In step 2, the student would be coming to the tutorial, clarifying the doubts, making the presentations, and discuss with the teacher.
At DME, we have invested in the best in the class academic ERP, which allows us to have a 360-degree robust communication amongst all the stakeholders, students and faculty members.
DME's virtual learning mechanism is no less than real-time classroom teaching,
wherein the students are provided the pool of e-learning resources in the form of PPTs, video lectures and online classes in a very student-friendly environment.
There is no need of mental blocks. Online teaching is as effective and interesting as offline teaching. Let the students enjoy this new mode of education.
In DME, we believe in quality education. We take care of our students. We want to see them happy.
Mental and emotional health are one of the most challenging issues of present times. DME Mentoring Cell takes care of that. Not just this, we go beyond academic curriculum to instill the most important employability skills in our students.